Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you could have your attention again. We'll start the middle session. Middle session is traditionally focuses on some technical aspects and technical breakouts. So the sessions in this room have three presentations, one by Irish Water, one by Construction Industry Federation on Lean Construction, and one by CIOB and some experiences how they're progressing with the BIM agenda in the UK. So first off we have Conor Coyne. Conor's Commercial and Procurement Manager of Irish Water. Conor's a Galway lad, having attended St Mary's College, graduate of NUIG with a law degree. He's since obtained an MBA from Trinity and is a chartered management accountant with SEMA. Has broad experience in commercial roles internationally and in Irish commercial state companies. Conor joined Irish Water 2 years ago at its inception, has recently been promoted to head up its commercial and procurement activities. He's joined by his colleague Ricky Cannon as a commercial contracts manager at Irish Water. Ricky is a commercial and procurement professional with over 12 years experience in infrastructure, utilities, civil engineering, telecommunications and renewable energy industries. His wide commercial and estimating expertise specifically in relation to procurement of goods and services. Ricky holds a postgraduate diploma in engineering project management from Trinity, as well as undertaking an MSc in strategic procurement with DCU. Ricky has particular responsibility within Irish Water for managing and mitigation of commercial risks the company would undertake. Irish Water is gradually taking over responsibilities for water from the local authorities on a phased basis since January 2014. It will take approximately 5 years for that process to be complete, at which point we will have responsibility for the operation of public water services, including management of national water assets, maintenance of the water system, investment and planning, managing capital projects and customer care and billing. The speakers represent the commercial and procurement arm of Irish Water here today and will explain the pipeline of procurement and project rollout for the medium term with a particular emphasis for the west of Ireland. Thanks. On.
Morning all. Kind of strikes me as a bit ironic. The last time I was in GMIT was a decade and a half ago, representing NUIG, and now I come back with an even less popular body into GMIT. So hopefully I won't leave as battered and bruised as I did that day. So just to run through the agenda that we're going to go through today, I'll take a brief run through the introduction and context to our presentation, a national summary for future investments, specifically around assets and the capital infrastructure, and then look at some of the key Western region projects that are envisaged over the next year. Ricky then is going to give us an overview of how we buy in terms of capital works, framework agreements, contract strategy and risk, which is a key and fundamental part of how we buy. And then, I suppose, a very pertinent point for people in the industry here, key advice for successful tendering. Because you're probably aware of already, but this presentation will bring you through as well, is Irish Water's alignment with the ERV approach to procurement, etc. So that's a good pertinent point to go through. And then I'll just have a conclusion and recap at the end. And I suppose at the end of the session, then there'll be an opportunity to take questions or compliments or whatever else you want to put in our direction. So from an introduction and context point of view, Irish Water is the national utility responsible for providing and developing water services throughout Ireland. I won't go through the full spiel there, but essentially I suppose the key point of note is on the 1st of January 2014, under the service level agreement, Irish Water took control of the operation of water services across 34 local authorities then. With the merging of Waterford, City and County, Limerick and Tipperary, it stands to 31 local authorities, and that's under a 12-year service level agreement. As well as responsibility for public water services, we also have responsibility for capital and investment decisions regarding the country's infrastructure, and looking to do that on a holistic national basis rather than the local authority by local authority basis on which historically decisions may have been made in the past. So why are we changing the way we do it? So rather than going through the spiel about our valuable resources, this is about essentially how can we meet the 3 C's for water provision in the country. How can we do it in a cost-effective manner? How can we comply with regulatory requirements, be they from the CE or the EPA or whatever other regulatory requirements or legislative requirements that we need to abide by? And I suppose most pertinently and importantly of all, and can get lost sometimes in the overall conversation, but most pertinently of all, how can we provide a service which is fit for the standard expected and deserved by the customer? So once we meet those 3 things, then we're on the path to doing our job correctly. And we do not expect to be able to hit the ground running at 100 miles an hour and give a gold standard performance from the get-go. This is a transition. What we're trying to do is hugely ambitious and very, very timeline constrained. But and there's going to be bumps along the path, but we believe that this is the appropriate course of action. With regard to procurement specifically, Irish Water's procurement mission is to seek to source the most cost-effective solutions for sourcing activities in order to maximise the benefit of the company. So this is done through a competitive sourcing process and building up effective relationship with key suppliers. So the 3 key pillars or objectives for procurement for Irish Water are compliance, value for money, and risk management. And again, Ricky's going to talk more in depth about those areas. And the key focus area for procurement initially is about setting the strategy, then the management of specific categories and sourcing and alignment of that, managing of key suppliers and using the requisition to pay system in order to have a standard national approach to procurement. So for Irish Water, under Irish Water's guidance, that at the moment that's the Oracle system with local authorities. Procurement is in 3 main areas. The key focus of today will be in the capital area. Again, Ricky's going to go into a lot more depth on that, and I'll give a national and regional view on the key projects upcoming in that. Operations, this presentation doesn't deal as much with the operational areas, but I suppose from an overview perspective, for the 1st of January 2014, Irish Water had a number of frameworks in place in the operational area, including areas like chemicals, sludge, repair and maintenance, road surface furniture, and so on and so forth. Those frameworks were put in place for periods between 12 and 18 months, with the opportunity to roll them over for a year or so on and so forth, as is required. Towards the end of this year, it's envisaged there'll be a re-tendering of those specific frameworks. They may be, after having the experience of 2014 and a bit of 2015, we'll have a much better view of the market dynamics of the industry in general, of what is bought where and what works best in each one of the local authorities and regions. So the re-tendering and reframeworking of those areas will happen in probably Q3, Q4, maybe Q1 of 2016. And just for a bit of context, so stuff like sludge management and transportation nationally is worth in the ballpark between 20 and 30 million. Similar for chemicals, repair and maintenance, and that area would be probably worth somewhere between 30 and 40 million, right down to the less valuable framework areas in terms of the monetary value of valves, pipes, road surface furniture. And then our third area, which we won't really get into today, is with regard to indirect procurement, and that will cover stuff like IT, outsource provision, outsource contractors, and so on and so forth. So, from a national perspective, this is a summary for future investment. So the Safer Capital Investment Programme was launched on the 13th of May 2014 and identified somewhere in the region of 1.3 billion of expenditure between the period of 2014 to 2016. That was made up of, on the right-hand side, top right-hand side there, 3 categories. So category A was legacy in-flight projects with expenditure of 89 million in water and 191 million in wastewater. Category B was legacy design, which was valued 217 in water and 524 in wastewater. And category C is with regard to Irish Water identified requirements, whereby there was Irish Water identified a strategic requirement or imperative to invest in specific areas. So that's 22 million in water and 26 in wastewater. And then supplementary to that is another pot for major capital water conservation of about 152 million. So that brings you up to your 1.221 million. So what that means in terms of number of contracts envisaged in the SIP up until the end of 2016. So you can see that by far the highest amount of volume is in the 0 to 500,000 category, with 70 water and 100 wastewater in total. And that there will be 7 water and 14 wastewater in the greater than 10 million category. So where we currently stand on that pipeline in 2015 is, it's a very busy slide, but what this shows you is the process for each one of these projects through the stages and gates required as part of the tender pipeline in Irish Water. So the very top part, the process step, the tender forecasting and planning, moves on to tender development, tender evaluation, and then PD3 or Policy Decision 3, approval and contract signing, PD3 being an NRV term for that approval step. So in total, there's 149 tenders currently forecasted in the pipeline, and at the very end of it, the total signed contracts, as we stand at the moment, is 43. So the consultancy, there's 73 tenders in consultancy brief stage, and other framework tenders of a number of 84. And I suppose most pertinently of all, considering we're in Galway today, is to look at the Western region and an example of between 25 and 30 projects for this area, for this region. So this is the one-year forecast, and some of the key areas there where the date actually is with regard to when we expect the contract to be signed. So some of the key projects of note there by value would be the Balmullet, Foxwood and Charlestown Sewage Scheme, value of 22 million, and contract sign date expected on Q2 2016. The Letter McAward RAL contract worth 15 million, expected target contract signature date in Q4 2015. And the Letter Kenny regional contract for 25 million, that's Q3 2016. In Galway, we're looking at the Galway City Watercon for 6.5 million, and Roscommon Town Q1 2016 for a value of 15 million. Now that's just a snapshot of some of the projects that there's through the processes that we have certainty and clarity about. There are other projects, for instance, the Acton project with an overall value of about 5 million for wastewater treatment plant and a network contract, and that's also envisaged to be moving through the phases in due course. And I think it's worth pointing out there the Kinvara sewage schemes here are ready to go to tender in the next week. So there we are. There's an overview of where we are in terms of those projects. Now Ricky's going to talk through how we buy in Irish Water.
Morning. Thanks, Conor. Okay, so I'm just going to follow on from Conor, and again, Conor's kind of led us in nicely to how we buy by setting out what projects we have in the pipeline and what we're actually spending. I think it's important for us to let you know how we buy for you to be successful at tendering our projects. We have done a few things a little bit different in our contract strategy, and introduced a couple of new ideas into that strategy. So I'll talk you through that and a few pointers on how we use frameworks, etc. So just at a high level, we are governed by the Utilities Directive in Irish Water. So essentially, we have to abide by certain rules set out by Europe on around transparency, fairness. Again, how we call off from frameworks, how many contractors we will invite to tender, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the main platforms of how we buy, multi-supplier frameworks, multi-supplier framework agreements would probably make up 90% of how we buy our goods and services. So again, a lot of people are familiar with what these are. Maybe the students mightn't be as familiar. So essentially, a framework agreement is we set out a competition early on where we invite all contractors to tender or to prove to us their capabilities, their technical capabilities, and from that approach, we narrow the field down to, for example, within our major capital frameworks, 10 trusted contractors. So essentially what it does, it sets a list of contractors for us that helps us build relationships and build trust with the contractors. So again, as we go through the framework life cycle, which could be anything from 3 to 4 years, we'll get to know our contractors, they'll get to know us, they'll get to know how we work and how we procure. And I think it's important too that one thing it does is actually it speeds up the procurement process. So if we were to go to open tender every single time and go to the market and go to the official journal of the European Union, each and every time we would have to seek insurance information, their accounts, all that information from the contractors, which slows down the process. We'd have to evaluate that, go back out to the market again and actually tender the works once we've narrowed the field down again. So again, it's very good in actually speeding up the process for us. In terms of value for money, again, Irish Water is all about value for money and getting value for money and cost certainty where we can. And again, through the building of trust with contractors, I think trust is a term that could be thrown around very, very lightly at the moment. I think a lot of works down to the years, the last number of years have been procured under the public works frameworks. And essentially those contracts have led to a lot of disputes. And again, we want to move away from those disputes and start building relationships with contractors that, as I said before, they understand us, we understand them, and we come to an agreement of ways of working. I suppose the last point there on the multi-supplier framework is a robust supply chain. A robust supply chain can't be underestimated. Again, under our frameworks, we have call-off rules where we have 10 contractors. We'll ensure that all contractors on the framework get a fair shot at price and works. So essentially what we're doing is we're spreading the work across a large number of contractors rather than going to one individual contractor. And again, you don't want a monopoly in this business because, again, a lot of key players will move out of the market and then we lose that competitiveness and therefore we lose that value for money. So again, multi-supplier frameworks is the main way we will purchase within Irish Water. I touched on it there briefly. The OJEU is again, it's under the EU directive. Some tenders we may have to advertise under the European Journal, whether it be because of value or whether it be a cross-border tender or whatnot. And again, through our Irish Water website, it's important if you are a contractor to continually go in there and look to see if we're advertising tenders in there, which we may do so from time to time. Just at the very end, just to make people aware that we have a major projects division within Irish Water. And essentially what it does, it's an umbrella section within the business that covers both Irish Water and Gas Networks Ireland. So in a lot of cases, a lot of major projects, they would take control of them and we wouldn't really have any input in them whatsoever. So I think if there's a lot of contractors here, you would be familiar with the Cork Lower Harbour project. Now it's an €80 million project. It's made up of a wastewater treatment plant and about 3 network contracts. So again, just to be aware that not everything comes through Irish Water, that there is another body within there that looks after the really big stuff. So just in terms of how we buy, the frameworks we have set up to date are listed there. So the technical and engineering, or the engineering technical services, which essentially are consultancy frameworks. And as Conor pointed out, we currently have about 71 projects with consultants. So if we have 71 briefs with consultants, naturally enough, there's going to be 71 large projects coming down the line, as listed by Conor up there. The minor civil engineering and the minor MICA, again, we're using those extensively. Now, minor, the way we split minor and major is minor is anything from 0 up to 2 million, but there is a bit of an overlap with the major stuff, where the major stuff can go from 500,000 up to 10 million. So again, like I said, there is a bit of overlap there. Network services and rehab, again, there are tenders out in the market currently for those, and the same with investigative works. Now, one framework I don't have in there that we're currently working on is, and you probably it's probably in the media quite a bit, is the focus on leak detection. We're currently looking at the strategy around developing a framework for leak detection. and we're setting aside a budget of 600 million to spend over the next 5 years on leak detection. So again, in terms of a framework and a budget, it is sizable. So again, how we buy, contract strategy, I think is an important one to touch on. Again, probably from everyone's perspective, whether you're a contractor or you're a student, you're studying contracts. So one of the main things we did at the start of the year, started last year actually, we sat in a room and we looked at the public works contracts, and it was widely agreed across, again, within the room there were people from industry that are now working with Irish Water, from the contracting side, from the consultancy side, and from the local authority side. And I think it was pretty widely agreed that the public work contracts, they weren't working. And again, whether that be down to the contracts themselves or the way the market has went over the last number of years, again, it was widely accepted that they weren't working, and it wasn't a path that we chose to go down. So we sat and we discussed our contract strategy, and we decided to, in the instance of network contracts, to move away from employer design contracts and move to a design build contract. So essentially, this is all around, and I'll touch on it later on, choosing between different types of contracts, where you're employer design, design build. It's all about how we handle risk, who takes the risk, how we mitigate the risk, who accepts the risk, who prices the risk, who pays the risk. It's essentially all about risk, and again, agreeing ways of working with the contractor. So essentially what we did, we used the board gas networks contract as the foundation for what we want to do. So essentially it was an old IEI contract. Now to look at it now, it doesn't look anything like an IEI contract, but again, it had its origins as an IEI contract. So under that, as I said, we're going to design and build. So if you think about a network contract, you're going from point A to point B, whether it be with a sewer or whether it be with a water infrastructure. So what we're going to do with our tenders, we're actually going to supply in the background information of the tenders a full specimen design. So essentially what the specimen design is, it's a complete design, and we give it to the contractor. But importantly, and it's important to note that it sits within the background information of the tender information we give to the contractor. And what that does is, information that's sitting in the background information, again, all it is information. We don't stand over anything that we give a contractor within background information. So essentially, we ask the contractor to either accept that design, and again, it's an extensive design based on a site risk assessment, based on site investigation. We've identified the route that the network will go, and we have put together a design. So the contractor can choose to accept that design, or he can choose to modify it. We will give AutoCAD drawings for them to modify, and that will then form the basis of their contract. So again, they have now accepted the risk, all the risk, ground conditions, everything, the whole enchilada. So under the award criteria of the contract then, again, in reference to that design and build, we ask the contractor, so a tender submission will be roughly split 60-40 in terms of quality and price. We will ask the contractor then to write around the risks and demonstrate to us that they have priced the risk and accept the risk. We will also add an additional pricing schedule. So again, how we handle risk within the contract. Like I said before, it's a design and build contract. The ground risk is with the contractor, but we're introducing another schedule that allows us to identify risk items that are quantified, and also for the contractor to identify risk items that we quantify, that we will pay them fairly for under the contract. We're also introducing KPIs, and again, KPIs based on HSQE inspections, submission of documents, all that type of stuff. And again, we're putting a huge emphasis on quality in that we've actually developed a new formula where quality has now an effect on the price of the project. So a brief example, for example, if we split a project between price and quality 60-40, if contractor A is the lowest bidder, he gets 60 marks, and he only scores 50% of the marks on the quality. That quality score, 50%, will be multiplied against the 60 marks he got for his price, which brings his price down to 30 marks. And again, that's added to its quality, which again will have a huge impact on that contractor. So again, I have at the back of these slides, and they will be circulated, there is a lot of detail around this. So as I said, the slides will be circulated, and there is good information in there for you to actually work through a couple of examples. Another area we looked at is treatment facilities. Now again, we didn't really do too much different here. In the past, treatment facilities or micro contracts were typically FIDIC Orangeburg, and it was a design build contract with amendments added onto it to actually facilitate the operation phase. So essentially, within the last number of years, FIDIC have actually developed a gold book, which is a pure DBO form of contract. So we're moved to that, and I suppose one huge change that we're actually introducing there is, in the past, under a DBO contract, the operation phase we would enter into a 20-year contract with that contractor for the operation phase of a treatment plant. We're actually shortening that now down to 7 years, which again, it's a big change. And like before in the networks contract, we will have a huge emphasis on quality and the technical ability of the contractor. So again, just to touch on this very briefly, I'm conscious of time. Diagram just quickly sets out how we deal with risk, and again, a new initiative that we're introducing into our network contracts, which is early contractor engagement. So up front at the pre-tender stage, we will carry out full site risk assessments, we'll carry out full site investigation, and develop a full risk log. As part of our tender submission then to the market, we will issue all that in background information to the contractor, and then we'll give the contractor 2 weeks to come back to us with their view of any risks, their view on our risks and any risks based on their previous experience that they see within the project. So one thing we're doing here, and it's something that's not common to a lot of contracts, especially in Ireland, is we are engaging with the contractor. And again, I think a lot of people will agree, the contractors are the guys with the experience on the ground. Again, myself, coming from a contracting background, consultants, again, we know that that's where the knowledge lies. So we're going to leverage that knowledge, and we're going to include those risks within the contract. And again, just moving on then, when the contract's awarded then, we'll have set out a schedule of risks that were identified in the contract, and we will share certain risks that were identified with the contractor. If the risks weren't identified or weren't highlighted by us or the contractor, again, they're at the contractor's risk if they do occur in the project. Now again, key advice for successful tendering. Look, this stuff is you read down through it and it looks very simple, but you'd be very surprised where a lot of people get this stuff very wrong. Okay, competitive price, we're all very much aware of competitiveness and the race to the bottom that has occurred over the last number of years with construction contracts. Again, the way we've dealt with risk in the contracts, we're hoping to move away from that. One thing we'll issue you with when we issue a tender is we'll issue a number of questions. And again, those questions will be weighted with markings. So read the question, understand what we're looking for, and answer the question. If the question is allocated high marks, it means that it's an important topic for us. It's something we want you to demonstrate to us that you understand that technical criteria. Again, some questions are pass-fail. Understand which are pass-fail. If you don't submit something, you're disqualified from the competition. Contract conditions and risk. As I said, we have introduced a couple of new initiatives into our contracts. It's important for you to understand what we've done with those contracts, what risk is with you as a contractor, and how you price that risk and how you weigh up the risk. And again, like I said, we will engage with the market. It's important for you to come back to us with your view on the risk. So again, just at the very end, the last couple of points, we're open for business. If you have any questions during the tender period or post-tender, please contact us. If you want to know, again, if you see something in the tender, seek clarifications up front within the periods allotted. If you feel that you're not winning work, come to us, sit down with us, we'll go through your tenders and talk you through where you're falling down. And again, we'll bring you along with us. And hopefully, again, go back to my point about a robust supply chain. It's very important that we make sure everyone is winning work. And yeah, that's it. So I'll hand you back to Conor. and wish you good luck in your tenders and your exams.
Thanks very much, Ricky. So just to conclude, a one-pager on the key pertinent points that I suppose that we spoke about today. So I suppose we should never lose track of the fact of the undertaking, the size of the undertaking which we've taken on from the 1st of January 2014, moving from 34 water service authorities to one central authority. A capital investment programme worth in the region of 1.2 to 1.3 billion up until the end of 2016. And specifically for the Western region, the key pertinent, some of the key projects are those Common Town Sewage Scheme, Letterkenny, the Belmullet, Foxville, Charlestown piece in Mayo, and the Galway City Water Conservation piece in worth 6.5 million. I suppose there's a movement as well towards the use of framework agreements where possible and public advertisements, and a change in contract conditions from FIDIC Orange to FIDIC Gold, and public works where capital frameworks are aligned or a modification of the Gas Networks Ireland contract, formerly for Gosh Networks, with amendments. A key point, and I think Ricky really went through it there, is the emphasis on risk and early contractor engagement. And I suppose finally, and very apt as well with all the students in the room, the advice on winning tenders is to answer the question you're asked. So I suppose with that, I'd like to thank you very much for listening to us for the last half an hour, and we look forward to any questions that you may have for us at the end of the session. Thanks very much.